Now, textual analysis apparently is about text, but we need to understand something unique about that, and I'll talk about that just in a minute. Catherine Belzy, her affiliation is shown to be Swansea University, but I think currently she works somewhere else. Anyways, she's one of the major contemporary critic and theorist of English literature, right? So that actually means that the kind of method she is going to propose is very much rooted in English studies, right? So there is always, a kind of uh, the primary field of a particular research method. Okay, for example, when we discussed oral history, uh, I we got to know from the chapter, and I refer to the fact that oral history has its roots in social sciences research of history, right, and sociology, right. That is the background where this method emerged from, right. So as opposed to that, textual analysis as a method is rooted in the analysis of or reading of a literary text. Okay, so similarly, we discussed that visual methodologies, right? The way we discuss them, both with reference to discourse analysis and analysis of, the compositional interpretation. Visual methodologies are rooted in the analysis of art, right? That is the basis. But then that method has developed and evolved into the study of lot many other art forms, right? So from painting, we can go on to lot many other visuals as well. Now, this method, textual analysis, as a research method, is rooted in the study of a literary text. Okay, but what Belzy would tell us over and over again is this: that textual method or textual analysis, even if it is rooted in the study of a literary text, we need to expand our understanding of what a textual analysis, what a text is in textual analysis, right? So text is not necessarily a written piece of word. Rather, a text could be a painting too, right? So in fact, the example she would use over here, in this particular chapter, is that of a painting, right? Now, she starts her explanation of textual method by proposing various possibilities, right? So the first possibility of conducting research in English studies, I mean, you are almost all of you are students of English literature, so you can relate well with that. So the first common and available method to conduct research in English study is this: you choose a literary text, you go to library, online or offline, and you find what is written or published on that particular literary text. You read some of that material, and after reading that material, you come to the conclusion that this particular literary text has not been written from one particular perspective. And you, as a student or as a reader or as a writer, you identify what in simple words we call a research gap. We will discuss that later in our course. So you identify a research gap, and then you claim that you will be analyzing that primary literary text from a particular perspective, because that perspective is missing in the literature available on that particular text. right? I hope you can all relate to uh, this particular way of conducting research in English. If you cannot relate to, at least you can clearly understand it, how it can possibly go, right? So for example, you are at the stage of writing your thesis, or you are at the stage of writing your final paper for a course. You read 5 novels in the course. Your professor says that you can write your paper on any one of these novels, right? Now, you go at home, you write something, maybe an abstract, you share it with your professor. Your professor will tell you, well, the kind of study that you are trying to do uh, has been done by so many people. So, what is your contention? What is your contention about it, right? I'm sure most of you have heard of this word from your professors and classmates, or in general, you are aware of this word, contention. So, what is your thesis statement and what is your contention? So, it will take you very, very, very long time in order to uh, get down to any particular contention or any particular thesis. The expectation that professor will have from you is that you should come up with an original contention, with an original thesis statement, right? And that becomes very challenging for you because everything that you say about a particular text, that seems to be so repetitive, right? It seems that all that every viewpoint that you have about a particular text has already been written at one place or the other. You know, as you read all that literature, right? As you read all that literature, you seem to find that uh, everything is already there, right? Everything has already been said, and you find it very hard to produce a unique perspective about a literary text. Now, Catherine Belzy describes this process of students conducting research in English departments in this particular manner. And she finds this method of conducting research very a very limited method in terms of training the students uh, how to conduct research in English. And her argument is this, that if a student first reads a text or observes a text and then finds out what has been written about particular text, and only at the third stage the student tries to develop a unique perspective or a unique contention or a unique thesis statement about that particular literary text, then probably the student has wasted so much of her or his time, has already wasted so much of her or his time. And after that, after all this process of reading all that material on that particular literary text, probably the student will have this feeling that whatever she or he says about the primary text is always repetitive, right? So when I use the word primary text, by that I mean the text on which you want to write something. It could be a poem, it could be a play, it could be a painting, it could be a novel, right? It could be a drama as well. So that is what I mean by the primary text, right? So according to Catherine Belzy, reading of so much material before the student starts writing her own paper, reading of so much material already fills her mind with so many uh, perspectives of other people. And after filling her mind with so many perspectives of other people, very little possibility is left for the student to think of something original from her own mind. She therefore proposes a different method of research, and she called that textual analysis. Right? Now, how can you as students engage in textual analysis as a research method? Her proposed method is this. that you reach a literary text or you reach a text. Again, the text could be a novel, a drama, a poem, a painting, right? Or an image, visual image. It could be anything as far as it has culture representation in it, right? As long as it has culture representation in it, right? So this is an important phrase for you all, right? Culture, any you know uh, piece of representation which has culture in it can be treated as a text. Okay, so the culture representation through visual or through words. In simple words, it could be a painting or it could be a written text. Either way. So once you approach that particular text, a painting or any other written text like a novel, a short story, a drama, when you approach them, the most important meaning that you can draw out of that particular text is the meaning that emerges in your mind through a direct exposure to that particular text. So, the first step in writing a research paper using textual analysis as a method is to identify a perspective with reference to that particular text. Identify that and write it down. So, in more direct words, what do you think? What is this text about? What do you think? What is your perspective about that particular text? According to Catherine Belzy, there is more originality in identifying what you think about that particular text. There is more originality in that rather than first read about what other people think about that text and then come up with a new perspective. So there is more originality in the first approach rather than the second approach, right? Now, once you have identified what you think about that particular text, and you take your notes, of course, right? You do not just imagine everything. You take your notes, you write down all the thoughts that come to your mind related to that particular text. Now, after you have identified a number of perspectives and you kind of narrow down to one particular perspective about a particular text, after you have done that, the second step for you is to start your research. Now, the example that she herself used, that of painting Taquin and Lucretia, you can just Google it and see that image as on your own too. The image immediately brings to our mind some kind of gender tension between a man and a woman. It could be a tension of male dominance and female victimization, tension between both. It could be, the power struggle, again, across genders, or it could be, an outright act of crime, kind of the theme of rape, right? Now, whatever perspective you build after looking at this painting, that perspective is valid. But after you have taken down your perspective or perspectives, initially you write all those perspectives that come to your mind, and you kind of put them together, and then you are able to have a kind of like uh, final idea. Okay, no, this is what this painting is about. After you have done that, the second step to start research is this, that you connect that particular text with its actual context. Where was this text produced and at what time? Is this an 18th century painting by a French artist, or is it a 7th century painting by an Italian artist, or is it a 20th century painting by an Indian artist, or is it a 4th century play by a Greek playwright? You identify the real cultural context of that particular text. Now you have started your research on the topic after you have your own perspective about that. You need to then familiarize yourself with the specific perspective with reference to that particular culture. For example, if you say that this painting is about rape of a woman by a man, right? That is your perspective about that painting. All right. Now is the time for you to start researching. Okay, what is this painting called? You should have a name for the painting. Who's the painter? You should have a name for the painter, right? Okay. Uh, which culture this painter belonged to? Italian, French, Greece, South Asian, Indian. Okay. Uh, so you know the time period, you know the culture, or you know the country to which that particular painter belongs, right? Now you identify the theme of rape as one of the themes of the painting, and you think that that is the theme that seems to be so obvious in the painting, and that is what you would like to study, right? Now you need to then in your research study a little about the theme of rape as it was treated in the related culture and related time period. So if you identify the painting to be 18th century French painting, you need to look up how the French treated the theme of rape in 18th century. You need to read about it. Now you are in research. Now you are in research arena, right? So you are reading about it, familiarizing yourself with what was the gender politics in 18th century France, what it looked like. And through that reading, what essentially you are doing is you are preparing yourself for the elaboration of that particular painting, right? So the elaboration that you produce, or in other words, the analysis that you produce out of that particular painting, that analysis is not going to be the product of your imagination. That analysis is going to be the product of your actual research, actual reading of certain texts, of certain books about the theme that you identified. So you can come up with your analysis by explaining that, well, this painting is about rape, for example, if you take that as a theme, and then you might argue that the painting shows the complete dominance that male had or man had over the woman. And then further on, in the uh, research that you conducted, you will connect the painting with that research to establish your point. For example, the point that the painting is about the complete dominance that the man had over the woman, right? Now, if you say that the painting is about the dominance that man has over the woman, mind it that that is your thesis statement, that is your contention, right? But you need to establish that contention with reference to the research that you conduct. Now, I can anticipate the challenge. You can also anticipate the challenge. Can you read all those books written about the theme of rape in 18th century France? Of course not. So what you do is, for the sake of your research, you identify the limits of your research. So you say that in order to understand the theme of rape in 18th century France, you're going to read just one representative book or two representative books about this particular theme in 18th century France. How will you know which book is representative? Well, that is your research. Okay, you go to library, you go online, and you find out what are the representative or important books on this particular theme. So you have a look at the title of the book, the publisher of the book, the writer of the book, and then you make sense of, okay, this book seems to be more authentic as compared to other books. The book could be from a famous historian, by a famous historian, uh, written by a scholar who teaches at a good university, something like that, right? Or you might have 2 to 3 articles instead of just one book. But then you use the ideas from that particular book in order to analyze that particular text using the contention that you developed out of your own original observation of the text. So according to Catherine Belzy, this way of conducting research is much more productive because it makes the students and scholars learn the actual culture of a particular society, right? And at the same time, they can come up with the original contention or thesis statement about a particular text, right? So this is what we call the textual analysis. Any questions?